All right, so we're about to start. We look like we're streaming on a few different platforms. This is a conversation with Steve Gillmor. And Keith
Okay,
here.
why don't you
Gonna
take your
silence
camera
my
off?
phone. I will. Take a moment to silence your phones. And let me get everybody straight here. Okay, Steve, I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay.
All right,
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you a count.
Mhm.
Okay, mute is off. And we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is a special edition of Gillmor Gang Substack Live, the live edition that is on Substack. Perfect. So, Keith, you've been doing some strange things with you. That was the week that was
you gonna introduce me?
video show. Yeah, I'm going to. Welcome, Keith's here.
You're welcome. Hey, everybody. Great to be here with, there's been a revolution. The rest of the gang were eliminated earlier today.
What, from the competition?
Yeah.
That's not true.
No, it isn't. I just wanted to get into your mind and confuse you and make you forget what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, you can get in line on that.
That's my job, Keith.
So
Okay.
yeah, I have been doing lots of, well, Substack's been doing a lot of things. Let's start there.
What, going out of business, right?
Not, but if you read the New York Times, you might believe that to be true. And of course, they have no self-interest in saying so.
Yeah, but that's old news. We talked about that about a month ago.
We did. No, they've been shipping features like systematically, you know, every couple of weeks there's a new feature. The most recent one, of course, was doing video, that you're allowed to put a line in the video and say, you know, free subscribers can watch up to this line, but you can only see after that line if it's paid. So
That was what, 3 months ago, right?
yeah. So
Okay.
the thing they announced last week, and then I saw it visually in the interface, is when you write a new newsletter and you go to publish it, there's a recording button at the top, and it says, "Why don't you do the audible version of your editorial?" And the thinking behind it is that
I think they call it a voiceover, correct?
it's like a voiceover.
No, I think they call it a voiceover.
They called it a voiceover, and in the email they sent to describe it, they basically said, "Look, it's not enough people listen to podcasts. If you just do the podcast, but if you put the audio version of your editorial in this voiceover thing, we're going to see if more people will listen to it." And that was their goal. So I recorded the audio version of my editorial and I published my newsletter with it in. I also, because I do this every week for the last 2 weeks, I've now, if you like, unbundled. That was the week. That was the week. Used to be a newsletter with a video with me and Andrew Keene, roughly a half-hour conversation about the newsletter embedded within it. And I used to take the audio from that video and make a podcast on Anchor. So it was all bundled together inside the Substack. What I did in the last 2 weeks is unbundle it. So now, like last week's, that was the week, was called The Live Streaming Wars in Live Sports. And I did a podcast, a video, and the newsletter, 3 separate things. And I kind of tracked the statistics about which one is the most interesting, from, you know, which one gets the most attention, if you like. So that's what we're doing.
So I think I understand the metrics request, but from a user perspective, why are you ostracizing the video from the overall package?
The true answer is, if I knew, I'd tell you. I'm messing about to see what happens, and what I hope happens is that, well, firstly, just to give you some context, I have about 20. I recently culled my subscriber list. I deleted anyone who hadn't engaged with the newsletter ever, other than to open it. if they hadn't clicked on something, or I deleted them. And I went from 5,000 subscribers down to 2,300. And my open rates went from 24% to 60%. So that's better math than would be accounted for just by me culling. So sending it to less people seems to have meant more people are paying it attention. So I did that. So I've got 2,300 subscribers. I upgraded 500 of them to being what is called paid subscribers because they had engaged a lot. So I took the people who engaged the most, and I upgraded them to paid for free for 12 months. And then I made the video only available to them. But I send it to everyone. I send the video to everyone, but only the paid ones can see the whole video. The ones who are not paid, they get blocked after 10 minutes.
So you're trying to basically force them into paying for a subscription, even though you've already comped them, so they already have a subscription. I'm a little confused.
No, out of 2,300, 500 are comped.
I see.
So the rest are not. So I'm doing two things really. One is I want to give something to the most engaged people that is special for them. So that's the video. And then secondly, I want to give other people a way to join that group. And they would have to pay, you're right. But actually, every new subscriber I get, and I'm now getting about 10 new subscribers a week, and I didn't used to get any. The 10 new ones per week, I'm comping them for a year as well. So if you're a new subscriber by default, I give you the benefit of being engaged because you decided to subscribe. So I'm comping everyone for a year that's new. So they all get the video. A year from now, the big test will be how many of the comp people, when the 12-month comes to an end, decide to stay paid subscribers. And the video is my tool.
And so what's the point of the newsletter? Generally, what's your strategy about the newsletter?
So the newsletter, the most valuable thing I think is the newsletter, because I'm not very good at many things, but I'm really good at reading in the areas that I focus on and filtering it down to the good stuff. And in my newsletter, I generally put something like 20 or 30 pieces that have really stood out that week in the areas I care about, which are mainly to do with big tech, venture, regulation, economics, stuff like that. And so the editorial I do every week is shaped by whatever that is. And obviously recently it's been a bit monotonous. It's all about how bad the market is. And so the editorials have been monotonous as well, because I can't write stuff that isn't in there. So
basically what you say is that it's really bad now, but it's going to get great.
It's really bad now, but it's going to get great. And the crypto coin I'm going to produce will be worth something sometime. Yes, that's roughly right.
Crypto coin, is that going to be through Substack, or is that just
it wouldn't be so.
It's a joke that you're making, yeah, right?
It's a joke.
Okay, thanks.
There is no coin. And anyway, so what I'm doing with the newsletter is I think I'm giving 2,300 people, and that's just on Substack. If you add it all together, I've got 6,000 on LinkedIn, 20,000 on Medium, and 5,000 or so on Twitter, and about another 5,000 or so on Facebook. So if you add them all together, it's a lot of people. I think I'm giving them a lot of value in the newsletter. The center of gravity is Substack. And I think the video is just kind of for fun. It's where me and Andrew, well, mainly Andrew, tells me.
Andrew is Andrew Keene.
Yeah. Andrew Keene basically plays the role of my nemesis every week, where he explains very effectively, and he explains to the world how stupid I am and how wrong I am. And
there are some people who think that it says more about Andrew than it does about you, but go on.
Yeah. So basically the video is for fun. And I used to hold back the newsletter by a day to make the video be available to be in it. Now I don't. I email the newsletter out on a Thursday to everyone. And I say, if you want to see the video, it's coming on Saturday or Friday or whatever. There's a separate post. And that's what I do. So everyone's getting 2 emails from me a week now, one with the newsletter and one with a video.
Okay. And then there's this third thing that is my favorite of the features coming from Substack, which is the iOS app.
Yes. Yeah. The Substack reader.
Correct. Are you going to show me now?
I don't need to because you've already got it right, but I'm going to just check.
Oh, you look like
stuff.
you're going to be doing something.
Yeah, look, right at the top is my newsletter. There you go.
Yeah.
That is my newsletter. TikTok's data dilemma just bumped me down. But my newsletter was there. Yeah, it's quite far down now, which means I clearly haven't opened this app for a little while. But yeah, that's the app. And it's very good because you get to listen to the audio. You can watch the video in it. You can search in it. You can subscribe to people who publish, including external RSS feeds, by the way. So it's very well done, that Substack app.
Okay. And then you were saying in the first take of this performance, you were talking, I believe, about the new audio embed or voiceover
stuff. Yeah.
Yes. What's that all about?
To be honest, at first I didn't fully think it was about anything. I thought it was a feature with no purpose, but I tested it, and there are listeners, readers, and viewers, and most people are only one of those 3. For example, I'm a reader, and there are some types of content for which I'm a viewer, and I'm a listener, almost a none. So different people are different. And what it allows is somebody to be running on a treadmill or walking in the park and listen to my editorial instead of having to read it. And there are quite a lot of people for whom listening is more pleasurable and more convenient than reading at certain moments in time. So it's designed to let you speak to your audience instead of forcing them to read what you wrote.
And so you turned on this feature that you didn't understand and then experimented with it. How did you do that?
Before, in Substack, when you've got your newsletter, before you go to publish it, there's a new area at the top which invites you to record the voiceover. And all you do is click. Well, there's 2 ways. You can upload a pre-recorded audio, or you can record live in a browser window, which is what I did. And it counts you down, 3, 2, 1. You start speaking, using the newsletter as an audio prompter in a way. You start speaking, you press stop when you're finished, and it gets embedded at the top of the newsletter. So everyone receiving it in email or looking at it in the Substack app, the first thing they see is the option to listen to the audio.
Yeah, there's a little headset, earphone icon up at the upper right of the Substack app.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, at the risk of confusing anyone further, you are now distributing 3 different versions of the newsletter, correct?
Yeah, the readable version with the voiceover is one version. The video conversation with Andrew Keen is the second version. And the audio of the Andrew Keen discussion is the third version, which goes out to Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff.
Okay, so that little icon that I just described is in the upper right-hand corner of the Substack app. If you click on the video version, you will get the audio of the video. If however you you create, as you did, a voiceover, and you click on that same icon, it will give you this, audio commentary version.
Ah, interesting.
Yes.
So it's becoming like a high-end Blu-ray, with the director's cut.
Yeah, that just occurred to me as well, that the way I described it inadvertently, it started to remind me of the director's cut feature of a CD or a DVD.
Yep. Which in turn reminds me of our good friend who created Macromedia Director,
Mark Cantor.
Yeah,
that's right. So it reminds me of the Firesign Theater's Martian Space Party, which was a film that I directed. It was the one and only live recording of a concert with augmentation in the studio afterwards.
Interesting.
And they have the Firesign has an archivist named Taylor Jensen, who recorded a director's audio version of the film with the Firesign Theater, and then asked me to do one too, and I declined because I was so offended by not being included in the original recording.
Yeah, well, my problem is I hate the sound of my own voice unless I'm in the room speaking, when I'm okay with it. But if I ever record myself, I can't listen to it back. So I have no clue whether anything I record is any good because I can't listen to it. And my wife hates listening to it even more than I do. And she's normally the person I trust to tell me how stupid I am, but she can't listen to me speak either. So it's all done blindly.
I can help you out with that.
Yeah.
I'm good at that.
Tina is an equal opportunity critiquer, at least of me. Yeah. So there's a lot going on here that, some of it is just blind innovation that doesn't really have the impact of the conversation with so-called creators. Another part of it is the engineers and the business people at Substack recognizing a certain kind of facility. I've been recently doing that because I've been sort of embedded in the Substack and RSS related feeds of other people who are not on Substack, most notably Ben Thompson with his, I'm not going to say it because
Protechery.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was a joke on the George W. Bush. What's that guy's name? Dana Carvey.
Yeah.
Strategery, I think was
yeah.
was the bit, but it's not pronounced that way. So, it's at cross purposes. But I think this stuff is seriously important. And the reason I think it's seriously important is that this is the new platform, not for creators so much as for publishers. That these, I work for indirectly for Mark Benioff, who was one of the first technologists I felt who understood the relationship between consumer patterns and the enterprise. And so I think that something like that is going to occur here, and it's moving very quickly. The downturn, of course, has punished the people who are out ahead of the curve. In one way, people have to start to pay attention to more fundamental issues like survival. And so there's a interesting disconnect going on between companies that are doing this at the boundaries of the venture community it's kind of, I'd like to be able to touch on that, but not too deeply, because I think that there's a lot of fear and also a sense, whether we believe it or not, of the opportunity for the most sturdy and inspired generations of this technology to become significant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my world, there are certain people who really stand out, who are writing newsletters now as a form of narrative development and publication. The ones that come to mind immediately are Thomas Tungers, who's at Red Point Ventures, writes an amazing weekly piece. It's usually quite short, but very, very focused on a specific thing that most people in venture and startup land would care about. Another one is Samir Kanji, or Kaji, who is from Allocate, which is it's a new vehicle allowing normal people to invest in venture funds via a crowdfunding aggregation method. So if you wanted to invest in a good venture fund, he'll put it all together and they'll receive a single investment from him, but you're part of it. And he's a really great thinker. He's writing a lot of stuff. And then there's people like, that are more professional publishers like Protocol or Packy McCormick, who, I've only heard about these people since Substack came into being. Before, they were all buried inside jobs, and they were doing stuff, but I had never heard of them because they were, the brand of whoever they worked for dominated, not them. So it's kind of interesting to me that in the enterprise space, the narrative is the same thing as the strategic plan. So every enterprise that is professional has a strategic plan, and that plan evolves usually multiple times a year if the CEO is good. My guess would be Benioff's evolves even monthly. The faster the better, in a way, because it's about consuming and understanding what's going on and what it means to your company, and then narrating for everyone that. So these tools are storytelling tools that let you take an idea, shape it, and deliver it in an easily consumable way that is asynchronous. That is to say, people can take bite-sized chunks from it when at their convenience, in the method they prefer, audio, video, typed words, or whatever. And it to a certain extent, it is speeding up storytelling, which means that the rate of change in the world and the ability to understand it are coming closer together, and deep. If you want to go deep, you can. If you want to be shallow, you can read my newsletter, because that's what I cater for, is that.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't mean to joke, because I think you're on to what this thing is. I often intuit or observe these kinds of trends or transformations based on the things that I do on a normal basis that somehow shift. And I've been embedded in this Substack environment now for about a month. I still use all the famous websites flowing through an app called Feedly, which allows me to basically read, click on read later to many things that I never get to, as opposed to never getting to any of it. So there's a certain triage that goes on in the so-called traditional media space. But the thing about the newsletter space is that whatever you think about the authority or the credibility or the trust that you have in the specific channel, there are many things that I think have helped to undermine our democracy and various other things in the media that relate to just the business model that the media corporations have been struggling to survive. If you come from the record business, as I did at one point, the record industry, the musicians did not fare well in the transition to digital. And of course, the pandemic took out the rest of their livelihoods, and they're only just now starting to recover. But this avenue is alive and well. And, not having to plow through the sort of 24/7 repetition model of the media, particularly the news media, at a time when, what we're looking for are authoritative nodes, information that's reasoned, that's based on, there's one of my favorite authors is a woman named Heather Cox Richardson, I believe is her name, who's a professor in an Ivy League school, I believe. And she writes, I've learned more about the period of time from 1820 to just after the Civil War than I ever thought that I would learn. And of course, that's a drop in the bucket. But how you start to see the formation of the kinds of things that we are struggling with today really gives a tremendous amount of insight into what can we do in order to improve the chances of good people getting 50.1% of the vote, just to be specific about it. So I think these channels are enormously important.
Yeah.
For me, it's reminiscent also with the transition that RSS brought, back around 2000, with its impact, because it, of course, gave birth to podcasting, which I don't really consider to have been a success. It appears to be a success now, but I think that this embed model, this conversion of podcasting into streaming, I think it's going to create some inequities in terms of access. So it's not a panacea, but at the same time, I think that the mobile revolution has just changed our ability to retrieve and process information to the point where we can actually act on it.
Yeah. So I agree with a lot of that. My observation is at the highest level, I remember when Arianna Huffington basically fired Mike Arrington because Mike didn't want to be put in a pocket of being interested only in facts. He wanted opinion as well. And he wanted to pursue opinion with money. He wanted to raise a fund and invest in things he believed in. And it was considered inappropriate for a media entity that believed it was in the business of journalism to go beyond facts, which is a bit rich coming from Arianna Huffington, who is the most opinionated person on earth. Anyway, he got fired. Now, if you look at the world as it's evolved, the dance between facts and opinion is super important. If you only say facts and don't interpret them, then you can't help people get meaning for action. And if you only say opinions, you're free of facts, you can believe there's a flat earth. It's only when facts and opinions come together that you get true narrative. And facts and opinion coming together requires something more than a newspaper or a cable TV channel. And I think we're going to get there. I observe that, I watch CNBC in the mornings. In my car, I've got Sirius XM, and CNBC streams the audio version, which is the same as the TV version, just with no pictures. And so the traditional media has figured out audio and video, and they've all got websites mostly, so you can go and read. But their engagement with the facts is coming only through an editorialized prism that is specific to them. What Substack does is it unleashes brilliant minds with publishing ability to become the best authorities on the things they know about, like the lady you mentioned. And, you know, pretty soon you're going to be able to turn on your car radio and listen to her. What's that song about 10,000 channels? I forget what that song is from the 60s, and nothing on. Well, there's going to be 1 million channels or even 10 million channels, and there's going to be a lot on because it's all being unleashed. Now, how do you capture it? And how do you figure out what you like? Things like the Substack reader become really important. You know, what the channel now is, the Substack reader going to be like Pandora in your car soon with the audio version and the video version?
I don't know what that means.
Well,
like Pandora. I mean, I remember Pandora.
Well, you know, Pandora went, it's not true anymore, but Pandora went through this moment. You were probably there at Mike Harrington's house in 2005 when the Pandora founder did a show and tell to about 20 people, showing Pandora off on his laptop. Mm-hmm. And it became a phenomenon, and it got embedded on every car radio that was digital. So there was a Pandora app. And then it kind of, business challenges that you were referring to drove it to advertising, and it became something you didn't want to turn on, for me at least. Anyway, Substack, it feels to me, can be the good version of that. Bringing you and me to every car is totally doable. Bringing you and me to every TV via Apple TV or Roku or Amazon Fire is doable. So now it's a question of, what is the distribution upside to this publishing upside? I think there is one.
Well, when you were talking a few minutes ago, it occurred to me that the fundamental interesting part of this voiceover feature is exactly what you're just talking about, which is, you know, I've got this treadmill that I struggle with on a every other day basis or so. And
we call ours a coat rack.
Well, I've got the treadmill, and it's got these two little cup holders on either side of the thing that I don't want to grab, because then I'll get distracted and fall off and injure myself and then not be able to exercise. So I'm trying to pay attention to too many things at once. So what I do is I turn on Substack, and of course, because there are so many voices now saying the same thing, not only on the major media, but also on Substack, I'm, as you just noticed, because you just logged onto the app for the first time in a while, that there's no sorting mechanism, there's no algorithm, whatever. There's certainly no ability to keep it current to what you want. So anyway, I turned it on. There was this one thing that I wanted to read, but I didn't have time to read it because I had to do my exercise before my granddaughter goes to bed, at which point I have to shut the hell up. Right? Okay, so that's my struggle. And I pushed that little button at the top, and there it was. And it felt like a radio. It felt like a car radio. It felt like, it endorsed many of the major issues that we are facing with work from anywhere, work from everywhere, being home, being office, being discovery of important things that are going to improve the lives, not just of us, but of our children and grandchildren. This is pretty powerful stuff. Yeah. And these features are, you and I sat today and we're just poking around at the analytics and trying to figure out what can you see this, all of these kinds of indications of how this is going to be used and be effective for us. And it's very early. And I hate that phrase because everything is very early, but at the same time, it's well along in making this transition to something which is bendable to the time that we have to be able to choose important things. And those choices end up being the mega trends that guide many of the successes in the technology industry. So this is a very powerful moment.
I agree. And nobody's playing it as straight down the middle as Substack. There's lots of other players around the periphery of this doing various things, Twitter being the most obvious. But I think Substack is playing with a straight bat and not being distracted by anything other than their core mission, which is developing the tools and the distribution model that lets you decide how to use them. I think it's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think we need to nudge them a little bit in the direction of the transition to, I came from the trade publishing business. Originally, I wrote for Byte magazine, which was not a trade publication. It was
great magazine. I used to read it as very young in the UK. I read it all the time. It was about this thick.
Yeah. The day that I finally convinced my wife that it was time to throw them all out was a red letter day for her.
Yesterday.
Yeah, it was Thursday, actually. But, what followed after Byte and a certain bout of industry publications, business publications like Industry Standard and things like that, was, the core weekly trade pubs, InfoWorld, which I wrote for, and eWeek, which many of my colleagues at Salesforce worked for, and was one other company. Well, Computer World was owned by the same person that owned InfoWorld. So there were IDG was the other major force, and they had their conflicts, like the cable networks have today, in terms of business model and trust, authority, etc. But they were an enormously powerful way for people to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and who knew nothing about technology, and learn about it, and learn about who the people were that found a way of making a difference. So I agree with you about Substack. I know you're friends with one of the co-founders, and they've been helpful to us in terms of trying to pretend to listen to what we have to say while doing what they're doing, which is exactly what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
So I think it's powerful. I think I regret that. In some ways, I don't regret the fact that Elon Musk is potentially going to be a player in the Twitter universe, but I regret that Jack Dorsey is no longer as accessible as he used to be, because we need people who aren't quite as good at the business to be in positions of authority. I think this generation, the boomer generation, has a fairly unique trial on their hands of realizing that they're, for a brief minute or two, they're actually in charge and need to grow up and take charge of how things work. And I know that's sort of outside the scope of what we're talking about here, but I was reading there's a post called On Substack by Substack editors that interviews certain people. And one came down the pipe yesterday or so with this guy who was talking about how he discovers what works and what doesn't work on Substack. And one thing that I thought was really great to see was he understood that if you do, which is common on Substack and also in just newsletters in general, if you write something interesting and get halfway through it and then put it behind a paywall, you basically wipe out all of the talent that you need to be speaking with. There will be people who will understand that they need to pay for this stuff, and they will go ahead and make it a professional decision. But as an emotional decision, this is a real problem. And the reason that I mentioned the trade space is somehow, and I don't know if you remember how you used to, basically they send you a questionnaire every 6 months. And basically your job was to lie about your influence and power in the industry so that they would continue to check you off and put you as a qualified, what is now called influencer. And that was the economic game of that. Well, there's an economic game that needs to be played in the newsletter industry. And when people start to understand that they have to create a sense of integrity, trust, and the ability to actually move the needle, however small, according to what you, the individual, thinks is important, then we're going to have a way out of this terrible time of feeling helpless and impotent in the face of all the challenges that we have.
Yeah, I mean, that's why that was the week is free, and I plan to keep it free and never put a paywall. So then the question comes: is there any added value you can give to your most loyal, people that would, and not because you want them to pay. I comp everyone, so I'm not getting paid by anyone. But I want to reward the most engaged somehow with some extra stuff, and I chose to do it with what I think is the least valuable part of That Was a Week, which is the video with me and Andrew. Not because we're not valuable, but just because there's no new information in that video. It's just entertainment, really. Anyway, we'll see what happens there.
Well, I think that the saving grace in this discussion is that you really don't know what works, and neither do I. But some things work a little bit better than others. And I think this audio thing it's super interesting. There's a famous rock star poet, Patti Smith, who has a Substack presence. And, she just sits there with her iPhone, and basically she'll show you her dressing room. She's on tour in Europe at the moment. And, it's just it's like what is the word for a Japanese very short poem, Kon?
I know what you mean. Yeah. No, I can't remember the word, but I once
like that.
I once saw Joe Kraus and Graham Spencer do one at PC Forum. It's like 9 words or something, all of which have to have the same number of syllables or something like that.
Okay, well,
but
it's a meditation. It's a kind of meditation that she does, and she's writing a book behind a firewall. And I haven't subscribed to her, but I am a religious viewer of her releases because they're calm, and they're not upended by any particular, she's been there and done that. And
Yeah.
she's a treasure, and there will be others like her, and younger people who will find this space and turn it into something really, really big.
It makes me think of a more substantive TikTok. TikTok is so short lengthwise, but very talented people doing really short things. Very talented people doing slightly longer things that are intimate is would have been hard to do and deliver previously. There's people like the guy you don't listen to anymore, but I do, Gillmor, now does a podcast separate from.
I never did listen to him. I thought he was funny.
Yeah, he is funny. He still is. He's hilarious. Yeah. But he's now doing a podcast which is better than his HBO show. My wife listens to it, and I've listened to it a couple of times, and it's open kimono. It's intimate, even more than the show is, which is what I think Patti Smith is doing as well. So I think that ability to be yourself without any goals particularly is very empowering.
I totally agree. Tina, any last questions?
Wow. Well, I did have questions, but I think it would have taken us into another thing.
Oh God, help us.
Yeah. I kind of did want to ask why a lot of people have compared newsletters to blogs, and certainly we can see the history and the transformation, if you want to call it evolution. But I kind of wanted to explore a little bit about what the differences are. And we kind of know where blogging is these days. It's kind of, I don't know, it's still there in some forms. I see it more like, I don't know, for me, I see recipe blogs and, things like that, but not this kind of substantive, intimate stuff.
Yeah.
I think it kind of did used to be before. So what's the trajectory here? And it's going to go in that pattern of the blog, everyone gets excited about it, and everybody gets a Substack account and starts to either write or do video. There is some a little bit of difference there, in that this is easier to pull off, different mediums here, writing or video, but I'm just kind of wondering what you think about that and the history that we're seeing here play out.
Yeah, you could have a very long conversation.
Yeah,
especially,
that's why I want to get into it.
But we're almost out of time.
Well, the short version for me is in our lifetime of the internet, in our internet lifetime, the world moved from sites to blogs, to posts, to feeds, to probably notifications on top of feeds. And what happened is everything became granular and more atomic and more immediate. And blogs were kind of in the middle there when Technorati and Dig came about as the kind of analytics or karma on top of it all. And what happened is there were so many different types of blogs. And blogging was at that time a little bit like tweeting is today, which was a kind of a spontaneous thing. Dave Weiner set the tone because he would do blog posts that was one sentence, but he'd do 50 a day. And it was kind of engaging because he was, quirky enough to be interesting most of the time, and still is. So what newsletters represent is something totally different than that trajectory. I don't even think it belongs on that spectrum. I think what newsletters represent is a more considered, every now and then contribution to, I was going to say thinking, but it doesn't have to be to thinking, a contribution to humanity that is both substantive. Secondly, it's delivered. A newsletter is delivered via email, initially at least. People can come and see it on the web afterwards. But delivering something to a person in their email, which seems almost like a technological throwback, turns out to be a more engaging experience than hoping they'll click on something and come to your blog. So that's intimacy again. So I think newsletters don't belong. I don't see Twitter being threatened by newsletters. I think newsletters are just a form of content that will be in Twitter as a place to click on. So I think newsletters are their own thing in a way.
So everything's side by side, living, coexisting
Yeah.
with equal weight?
Yes.
Okay.
And newsletters are where you go if you want to. It's more intimate. You're getting to know somebody and their thoughts. Ben Thompson's a great example of that. I mean, you literally get to know him at a very intimate level. You can guess what he's going to think about a thing almost, and he's always got some insight that surprises you. So I read Barry Weiss, and I don't really agree with Barry Weiss on a whole lot, but I think she's a great writer, and I read her because she makes me think. Now, I don't read many blogs because they make me think. Thomas Tungers has it about right. He produces a newsletter that then is placed into new LinkedIn and his blog as a permanent version. But the newsletter is emailed, and that's where you first become aware of it.
We watched a streaming series called The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Great.
Well, I would quibble with great, but
It's great.
yeah, no, I appreciate why you think it's great. I would quibble with it only because it exceeded its aspirations. Just from a technical perspective, I thought that it got a little tiring. But the thing that about it was, I read a blog post, which was an interview with several of the principals, the showrunner, and the guy who took the main role, and there was some talk about the decision to use a David Bowie song in the project. Now, this was basically a vanity project, created by Nicholas Roeg, basically a very important filmmaker who basically did like 2 or 3 films that had the same kind of impact. And it was really a collaboration with Bowie based on some of the references to his other poses or roles, like what was the name of that, Ziggy Stardust, etc.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a Bowie expert. I've only come to realize how amazing that guy was in the last few years. But the record that they chose was a song called 5 Years, which was from the Ziggy Stardust period. What was interesting about this conversation that they were having is that they were well aware of the role that Bowie played in the creation of this. It was somewhat similar to Stanley Kubrick's relationship with Arthur C. Clarke in 2001, where it was really a collaboration. It was not the novel that Arthur C. Clarke wrote, nor was it it was something that was a hybrid between the two forms.
Mhm.
So I think, the 5 years, not a song that I really associate because I wasn't a big fan of Bowie's in that period. I only started to hear him later. And it just seems like that we're a little too close to Bowie's death to understand how this is going to all position into the larger impact of things. But these people were very cognizant of it. They ended up only using one song, which was this 5-year song, and they used it in the last moments of a 10-hour series.
Yeah, and don't spoil it because I haven't watched the last episode yet.
No, I there are no spoilers really because
Don't spoil it.
I don't even know what it means, so I couldn't possibly ruin it.
I can tell you just a personal anecdote. I was thinking of telling you this anecdote earlier, but now you've added a second anecdote to it. So I was Bowie era, and when I was 18, 19, I had long hair. I used to wear glitter nail varnish. I used to wear mascara and eyeshadow, and I wore
Nothing's changed.
and I wore girls' blouses with big shoulders. I had a pair of shoes that were stack heels, yellow, green, and red leather.
Keith,
About
Keith, can we please get a photo of this era?
I don't think there are any because we were not
here for the gang. Please, I beg you.
No, he's tried to destroy all the evidence.
Anyway, a few short years later, this is the anecdote I was going to tell you earlier. I invented a fictitious magazine called the IBM PC Users Group that had one writer and one reader, me. And I sent it to every tech company in the world asking for review copies of their hardware or software. And I got everything I asked for, free in the mail from all over the world, which is how I got into tech. I started learning things by getting freebies for the IBM PC newsletter so that my audience could be influenced.
Wow.
A perfect
Your
way.
audience of one.
You've said it all. Congratulations.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Brilliant.
Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.